They buried him alive, and the church knew. Beneath layers of marble incense and Latin prayers lies a truth so grotesque it was locked away for over 6 centuries. In the year 1389, Pope Clement officially declared deceased was sealed within his tomb, without medical confirmation, without ritual absolution, and without silence. Because the moment the final stone was laid, the bells rang from within. This isn't just another dark Vatican history. This is the unsolved, unholy descent into a forbidden papal burial where every document burns colder, every witness vanishes, and the body itself fought back. What you are about to hear is not sanctioned, not blessed, and not easily forgotten. Because once you understand what truly happened beneath the basilica walls, you'll question every miracle you were ever told. In the dim records of 1389, buried beneath 7 seals and a papal oath of silence, lies the death report of Pope Clement VII, a document so unorthodox it omits the most vital detail confirmation of breath. The chamber was sealed within 48 minutes of his last confession, no physician present, no second signature. And yet archived beneath Vatican Sublevel D, a single marginalia was later found scrawled beside the death log. He hadn't stopped breathing, only speaking. That phrase was redacted within weeks, but not before it was copied into a private codex by Henrik of Vallon, the scribe, later declared mad. What truly happened in that cryptid hour, what was heard under stone, is a sound no doctrine can erase. Because the bell did not wait for the living, and the man who rang it from beneath, he left behind something far worse than a scream. The dead are not supposed to ring bells. And yet, on a rainless midnight in June 1389, deep beneath the Vatican's oldest chapel, a low chime echoed from within the crypt of Pope Clement VII, a man already sealed, already mourned, already buried. The guards posted outside swore under oath they heard it. Not once. 3 times. One said it was hollow like a knuckle on iron. Another said it was slow like a ritual knock. But what chilled the spine of the archivists wasn't the sound, it was what they found missing. There was no bell in the tomb, no string, no pull rope, no mechanism. Only the body and the silence that should have stayed undisturbed. Within 12 hours the guards were reassigned, their reports erased, and a new marble slab, unmarked, was laid over the entry. A line was drawn and history was told to forget, but it didn't, because nearly a century later, in a sealed envelope inside the Jesuit archives, a forgotten priest wrote 6 words. He rang from beneath the altar. And no one knows how he heard it. But someone did, and someone lied. The Vatican doesn't misplace death certificates unless it needs to. In the official papal register of 1389, the death of Pope Clement VII is listed without signature, without physician's seal, and most chillingly, without cause. No record of illness, no notation of last rites, no witness beyond a single clerk whose name appears nowhere else in Vatican employment rolls. His title, Custodian of Silence. Scholars would later comb through hundreds of pages for a matching script, none found, because the entire entry seems to have been written in a single sitting by a single trembling hand. And then, just below the line confirming burial, a faint reddish smear, not ink. Even now, when the page is examined under spectral analysis, the trace glows warm. That's not metaphor. The page physically emits heat. The church archived it anyway, hiding it behind 6 layers of clearance under the codename Documentum Obitus Nullius. Translation, death certificate of no one. But someone was buried, and someone was very much alive when they went down. The question isn't why the church covered it up. It's what they were trying to keep from ever rising again. They say every pope leaves behind a testament, but his was deliberately erased. In the final weeks of Pope Clement Septimus's reign, witnesses described him as distant, feverless, and yet somehow unravelling. He cancelled all public masses, refused counsel, and confined himself to the Caecilium subterraneum, a forgotten prayer chamber built beneath St. Damasus Hall. The only person allowed near him was a mute servant known only as Gilio, who vanished the night before Clement was pronounced dead. But it was the Pope's final decree delivered in private to the Archivio Segreto that historians cannot explain. He wrote, "When I stop speaking, do not bury me. Listen. If I call again, do not come." That decree was never published. The parchment was sealed, black waxed, and locked inside a triple-warded reliquary box. But that box was opened once in 1854 by a papal historian who later resigned in silence. His personal diary contains only one entry. For that year the body warned us. We don't know what he read. We don't know what he saw. But ever since that box was disturbed, the same bell has been heard again 3 chimes, always at midnight, always beneath the floor. And this time no one's dared go down. It began with a breath no one accounted for. In 1903, during routine renovations beneath the papal archives, workers broke into a sealed corridor one believed to have collapsed centuries earlier. But what they found wasn't rubble. It was a staircase descending 33 steps into untouched stone. At the base, a door lined in lead engraved with 7 names, and one scratched out by force. No one could explain who ordered the excavation sealed again just 12 hours later. But in that brief window, one worker, a stonemason named Lorenzo Mico, reported hearing something behind the lead, not words, just breathing, slow, wet. His testimony was deemed hysterical, but 2 weeks later, Lorenzo was dead. The cause, asphyxiation. No sign of struggle, no obstruction in the lungs. Only a final note scrawled in red on his basement wall. I held my breath, but he didn't. The Vatican denied his employment. His name struck from payroll. But his widow kept the gloves he wore that night, and they were soaked not with sweat, but with condensation, as if something behind that door still exhaled. What lay beyond it wasn't forgotten. It was waiting. The church swore it never happened, but one man kept the key. In 1921, Father Aurelian Cass, a mid-level Jesuit archivist stationed in Rome, received a letter sealed in human wax, an archaic ritual once used only for papal heresy trials. Inside was a single phrase, "He is still breathing below." The envelope was unsigned, untraceable, and dated precisely June 3rd, the anniversary of Pope Clement's burial. Father Cass, a rationalist by all accounts, dismissed it as a hoax, until the lights above his study flickered 3 times that very night, and a locked drawer containing restricted obituaries swung open on its own. What he found inside was a second letter, older, brittle and water-damaged, bearing a near-identical phrase written in the same hand: "He never needed air." Only silence. Cass began cross-referencing burial maps beneath the basilica and found an anomaly. One chamber listed as sealed in 1389 was also listed as resealed in 1854. No entry, no exit, just resealed. That's when he made the call to descend. Alone. No witnesses, no last rites, and no record of him ever returning. The final document in his possession, a drawing, rough, trembling lines of a face beneath glass, with its mouth still open. Not every tomb is built to keep the dead, in some are built to keep the living out. In 1965, during a rare electrical fire beneath the Vatican Library, a fire response team was dispatched to secure temperature-controlled vaults. But one fireman, Marcus Delvey, separated from his team, descended through a warped stairwell into an unlisted sublevel. His radio failed instantly. What he described later would be dismissed as oxygen deprivation hallucination, but his account was chillingly specific. He claimed to enter a corridor of doorless crypts, each lined with brass nameplates, none readable, all blank but warm to the touch. The final chamber held a single sarcophagus encased in thick clear glass, fogged from within. No inscriptions, no cross, just a single deep crack along the inside wall, as if struck from within by force. And then the sound 3 distinct knocks, slow and deliberate, from inside the glass. Marcus ran. But before exiting, he snapped a photo, one that never developed, except for one detail, a handprint pressed against the lens from the inside. He never spoke publicly again. But in 1982, his daughter published his journal. The final entry read, "It wasn't a coffin. It was a window, and something was still looking out. No map shows it. No floor plan dares include it. But it's there beneath the basilica's eastern transept, in the negative space between 2 crypts that officially don't touch." In 1997, Dr. Elena Rousseau, a French ecclesiastical archaeologist working on papal artifact preservation, detected a hollow cavity while scanning ground density levels near the Clementine Chapel. At first, it seemed like an error. Then she ran the scan again, and the void measured exactly 13 feet long, 3 feet wide, 6 feet deep, the precise dimensions of an archaic papal tomb. Except this one didn't exist in any record, not even forbidden ones. She petitioned for permission to drill, denied. She requested schematics, none were available. But 3 nights later, someone slid a thin envelope beneath her door. No name, no seal, just a hand-drawn diagram, and a warning: "If he hears you knock, do not speak." Rousseau was found unconscious the next morning, lips torn, as if bitten shut, vocal cords hemorrhaged, without a single sound escaping. Her hands were soaked in human wax. When she awoke, she whispered one thing before slipping into catatonia: "I saw the bell." But no rope. It rang on its own. And ever since that night, the bell rings every year June 3rd at exactly 3:06 a.m. And every year another researcher vanishes. The closer they got to the truth, the louder the breathing became. After centuries of sealed silence, something beneath Vatican stone began to respond, not with words, but with rhythms. Alarms triggered, without cause, oxygen levels dropping in sealed rooms, and ancient bells echoing from places with no bell towers. Whatever was buried hadn't died. It had simply been waiting to be heard. And soon it would answer. The Vatican's walls don't echo, but lately something inside them does. In 2006, a team of climate control technicians was dispatched to recalibrate a series of failing humidity sensors in the sub-vault beneath St. Peter's Basilica. But the anomaly wasn't technical, it was environmental. The air pressure dropped dramatically every time they neared Vault 9X, a zone marked as structurally inaccessible since 1854. And yet footprints led in, none led out. Surveillance cameras glitched precisely at 3:06 a.m. for 6 consecutive nights. On the 7th one, technician Diego Rinaldi volunteered to enter alone with a GoPro rigged for thermal feedback. He descended only 29 steps before the signal cut. The team found the GoPro 3 hours later melted. But the footage recovered from its buffer was clear. A slow advancing fog, dense and moving against airflow. And over it, barely visible, a face pressed sideways against the wall, moving with him, mouth agape, eyes unblinking, inverted. Diego's final whisper into the mic before the static swallowed his voice: "I'm not alone. But it's not following me, it's walking ahead." From that point on, Vault 9X was relabeled as a containment zone, but nothing had ever been placed inside it. At least not by human hands. They tried to erase it, but the archives remember. In 2011, Sister Magdalena, a cloistered nun assigned to catalogue prohibited relics, was granted restricted access to the Vatican's subterranean reliquary, a vault only reachable through a rotating stone passage activated by Gregorian chant. She wasn't looking for anomalies. But on her third night, she discovered a reliquary box mislabeled as Saint Leo's Thumb, a common placeholder for unverified remains. What she opened was no bone. It was a dried human tongue nailed to a strip of vellum etched with only one Latin phrase, respiret pro nobis. Let him breathe for us. The tongue was fresh, preserved not by salt, but by wax, human wax. That night she wrote a desperate letter to her abbess. The wax is softening. I heard it murmur. She was found the next morning with her hands plunged into boiling water, her lips burned shut and her eyes sealed with candle soot. But the footage from the monitoring corridor showed something worse. She hadn't screamed. She had smiled. And just before she collapsed, the camera captured her mouthing two words, "He's listening." From that day, no nuns were allowed below level 4. But the breath still rises, and the wax still melts. They sealed the chamber, but something still exhaled. In 2014, Father Luis Navarro, an archivist priest trained in exorcism rites, was summoned to investigate a repeated anomaly in the Vatican's underground air filtration system. A faint moan like wind through a narrow pipe had been logged daily at 3:06 a.m. from an unmarked stone vent beneath the Clementine grottos. When Navarro arrived, he conducted a liturgical cleansing of the surrounding tunnels. But during the rite, the temperature plummeted 19 degrees in under a minute, and the audio recorder, rigged to document the prayer, captured a phrase not uttered by any human present. Slowed down, enhanced, and translated, it repeated a single sentence: no tomb, only throat. Navarro requested the area be sanctified and walled off, but before the order was approved, he vanished. His cassock was found days later, folded neatly on the vent, still warm. The security footage froze for exactly 6 minutes and 6 seconds. After that, a new rule was issued internally. No clergy are to be present in sub-level corridors alone between 3:00 and 3:30 a.m. But even in silence, the walls still breathe. And breath, unlike light, cannot be hidden forever. You can bury a secret, but you can't silence what was never meant to sleep. As the Vatican scrambled to contain growing internal panic, fragments of a forbidden doctrine began surfacing, traced back to a vanished order of monks who believed salvation came not through prayer, but through sacrifice to the one who breathes beneath the stone. What they uncovered next would shatter centuries of silence. Faith has a sound, and it was never meant to breathe. Hidden in the back of a leather-bound hymnal from 1623, researchers found a scorched parchment containing a diagram of a man not crucified, but inverted, with lungs carved open and throat expanded far beyond anatomical limits. Beneath it, a chilling inscription: to sing is to open. To open is to invite. The same sigil repeated throughout Vatican catacomb walls, often behind plaster or under altar stones. They weren't symbols of protection, they were a map, a containment seal. And worse, the ink used wasn't ink at all. Lab tests revealed a mix of ash and pulmonary tissue, human untreated, preserved by salt and wax. Every priest who handled the parchment suffered spontaneous nosebleeds and night terrors, describing the same thing: a chapel with no exits and a voice calling from the organ pipes, speaking without breath. This wasn't doctrine. This was design. A machine for summoning something older than scripture. Something that doesn't want worship. It wants echo. What if the Vatican didn't protect us from evil? but kept it alive beneath our feet in 1972 during an unauthorized renovation beneath the Papal archives. Workers broke into a sealed stone corridor, absent from all known schematics. Inside, they discovered rows of iron lung-like contraptions, ritual devices fitted with bronze tubes, running deep into the bedrock, all pointed toward a central pit lined with obsidian tiles. Etched into the metal were names ancient, predating Christianity, each followed by a date and a single Latin word, vivere, to live. The machines were not for the dead. They were to keep something breathing. One technician, a former seminary student, claimed he heard chanting echoing from the pipes, voices speaking in reversed scripture. He vanished that night, leaving only his rosary twisted into a perfect spiral. Vatican officials filled the corridor with concrete and issued a mass blackout order, but not before a final photo leaked in the image. One machine's gauges were still moving. No power source. No human inside. Just breath. What kind of faith needs a respirator? It wasn't just a myth. It was a liturgy of containment. In a 9th century codex hidden beneath the floorboards of a collapsed abbey in southern France, Vatican agents recovered a forgotten gospel, written in a dialect of Proto-Latin and Aramaic, unsigned, uncanonized, and disturbingly anatomical. This so-called breath gospel described a God not of heaven or light, but of exhalation, void, and throat. A deity that never created man, only listened. And when man sang back, it learned to sing too. Embedded within the gospel were precise instructions for tuning a cathedral to this entity's frequency, not through prayer, but through synchronized breathwork, blood harmonics, and subsonic vibrations triggered during Mass. Several cathedrals across Europe match the acoustic dimensions outlined in the text, including those linked to unexplained choir, disappearances, and sudden mass blackouts. One chilling line repeated across all pages. He waits not in the sky, but in the space between syllables. Every measured chant, every echo in those sacred halls may not have been directed to God, but used as bait. Worship was never the shield, it was the key. They didn't silence the heretics, they silenced the witnesses. In 1451, a choir of 32 monks vanished during a midnight mass at the remote monasterium Silex in the Italian Alps. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Just open hymnals, all stopped at the same note, a dissonant E-flat elongated beyond vocal range. Centuries later, audio engineers analysing the monastery's stone acoustics discovered something impossible. The architecture created a feedback loop capable of sustaining breath-based frequencies indefinitely, even after the singers stop. Hidden in a sealed reliquary beneath the altar was a scroll not of scripture but of waveforms, hand-drawn resonance maps resembling modern spectrograms centuries ahead of science. One Vatican-affiliated researcher suffered a breakdown after hearing a reconstructed playback claiming he could feel the sound in his lungs like it was breathing through me. The incident was declared a hoax, but the monastery was razed to the ground weeks later by lightning despite clear skies. No photos survived except one, the final choir rehearsal. If you zoom in, every monk's mouth is wide open, but none of their faces show strain, just peace, as if they weren't singing but being sung through. What they uncovered wasn't a relic, it was a sentence. In 1532, the remains of the monasterium Silex were finally excavated, revealing a sealed chamber beneath the altar, hidden from sight for centuries. Inside, the air was thick with an ancient chill, and upon the walls, etched in iron ink, was a single phrase: "What was sealed here is not dead." It took scientists over a decade to decode the text. What they found was more than words. It was a pattern, a blueprint for sound and structure designed to trap consciousness within the walls of the chapel, forever suspended between life and death. Every part of the monastery, from the pews to the bell tower, was specifically built to reflect sound back into the space, creating a purgatorial resonance. As the research team uncovered the hidden frequencies, one question remained unanswered. If you enter this space, do you leave? Or do you stay? And more chillingly, the recorded frequencies from that chamber were played back. What they heard next wasn't an echo. It was a voice. The voice of the monks who never left. The sound never left. It only waited. In 2019, a team of Vatican archaeologists, unaware of the previous findings, began re-examining the monastery's excavation site. As they delved deeper into the frequencies embedded within the walls, they uncovered an old, dust-covered relic, a speaker hidden in the altar's foundation, tuned to a single note. That note, the same dissonant E-flats, had remained dormant for centuries, but now it began to resonate again. As the sound waves spread, one researcher, Dr. Alessandra Russo, experienced a chilling sensation. She felt her pulse match the rhythm of the note. It wasn't just the sound, it was alive. Her final report, found in the ruins of her office, simply read, "I heard it. It heard me." And after that, nothing. No one saw her again. Only the eerie hum of that note lingered. The Vatican sealed the site once more, but something had changed. The echoes, the breaths, the voices, they are still out there waiting for the next to listen. And they're already listening to us. The silence was never empty. It was filled with waiting. In 2022, a university professor researching the monasterium Silex incident stumbled upon a set of unpublished letters from a priest who had been part of the original excavation. In the letters, he described a growing unease that no one had documented, a soft, consistent sound that seemed to follow him. The sound wasn't a bell or a voice. It was a hum, barely audible, felt more than heard. He described it as a pressure against his skull, a constant reminder that the monastery's secret hadn't been buried but released. The last letter ended abruptly. "I can't hear it anymore. It's inside now. Please make it stop." When the professor went to visit the monastery, he never returned. The only trace left was a single cracked phone screen recording a low hum vibrating louder, as if responding to something just out of reach. The investigation into the monastery remains open, but the sound continues to echo in the walls, waiting for the next to listen. The echoes of the past are never truly silent. They are only waiting for you to hear them. In 2024, an audio technician hired to restore the recordings of the monasterium Silex's excavation accidentally discovered something terrifying. While isolating frequencies from the ancient recordings, he uncovered a series of subaudible tones layered beneath the known sound, the kind of low hum that presses against your chest. What he didn't expect was that the tone was slowly changing. As the frequency shifted, a voice became faintly audible, whispering the same words over and over. "Come closer, listen longer." 3 days later, the technician's body was found, his ears bleeding, his eyes wide open, frozen in terror. The only thing left behind was his phone recording, uninterrupted. The last words captured on the device were chilling. "It's not just sound. It's watching. It knows when you stop listening." The Vatican immediately locked down the site, but the hum still lingers. And now, more than ever, it's louder. The walls remember, but they never forget. In the years following the discovery of the monasterium Silex's hidden chamber, Several Vatican researchers began reporting an inexplicable phenomenon, the sudden appearance of footprints in the dust leading to sealed rooms and whispers in the hallways, always at 3:06 a.m. No one was ever there. Yet when the sound started again, this time in a laboratory, faint murmurs. But louder than before, a wave of panic spread through the institute. Researchers once dedicated now quit without explanation, their minds unravelling as they became haunted by the hum. One of them, Dr. Sofia Valenti, was found in the archives clutching a sheet of paper with a single phrase written over and over. "It's already inside. It waits in silence." After her disappearance, her office was found in complete disarray, with the door locked from the inside. Her last message was a video, a recording of the hum growing louder until it swallowed her voice. And now, as the hum spreads across Europe, we're all being drawn closer, slowly, inevitably, into the silence. What if the hum was never meant to stop? In 2026, the Vatican archives opened a sealed file that had remained untouched for over a century, containing the final entry from Dr. Valenti's research journal. Her last words echoed through the dimly lit room. "The hum isn't a sound, it's a presence living in the gaps between the notes." The pages were filled with calculations, attempting to map the exact moment the sound began. But the further she went, the more desperate the tone of her writing became. She spoke of a presence that didn't belong in this world, one that was rising from the silence, feeding off those who listened too long. And in the chilling final entry she wrote, "It's not the hum anymore. It's us. It's calling us in." That night, the Vatican closed the archives once again. The hum grew louder across the city, and for the first time in centuries, the bells of the basilica rang, no strings, pulled no hands on the ropes. Something from below had answered, and it was far too late to stop it. What if the silence was never truly broken? What if everything we've heard, everything we've been told, has been carefully crafted to keep us in the dark? The truth buried beneath centuries of walls and whispers is far darker than any of us imagined. Now the hum grows louder, and its presence is closer than ever. The question is, are you ready to hear the truth, or will you, like so many, before turn away when the silence speaks to you? Leave your thoughts in the comments. What do you think is really lurking beneath the Vatican's walls? Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, because the answers are still out there and they're waiting for you to listen.